Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're sort of stepping into the world of glass houses, those structures for growing plants.
Yeah, it all kicked off when Kesser and Steen visited this modern greenhouse exhibition.
Right, and it just makes you wonder, what's the actual story behind them? So for everyone listening, that's what we're doing today, digging into the history.
Uh-huh. Exploring all the different names these things have had over time. It's not just greenhouse.
Definitely not. We're talking cold frames, orangeries, all sorts. And we'll also touch on, the farming know-how European settlers brought over to the Americas.
Exactly. It seems simple, a glass box for plants, but there's quite a rich history there. We want to give you a good, solid overview, quick but thorough.
Okay, so let's start with Kesser's thoughts after that visit.
Yeah.
He was thinking about the Danish word drivhus.
Yeah, the growth house.
Exactly, like you're driving the plants, forcing them almost, like moving cattle. It's about extending the season,
Hey.
right? Especially where summers are short.
Makes perfect sense for places with challenging climates. But he also saw the modern angle.
Yeah, how now it's sometimes more about, well, just enjoying the space. And that word orangery pops up.
Which feels different, doesn't it? More, I don't know, leisurely. Maybe a bit grander than just pure necessity.
It really shows how language tracks the use, from just growing things to maybe having your morning coffee in there, too.
And Steen, of course, he'd be straight on to Google.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably typing in Kivalites drivehus.
Quality greenhouses, yeah. Or polytunnel, orangery.
Drivus affected, though that's the atmospheric thing, different topic.
Right, we're not going down that rabbit hole today. Maybe Vext, another term for growth house.
And Hollander Huisine, the Dutch houses. It's just a blizzard of terms.
It really is. And Kessler noticed that too. Like in English, we tend to just say greenhouse.
Yeah, even if it's heated, which technically might be a high glass house, I suppose.
Or polytunnel, which is just about the material, the plastic sheeting.
And then there's the mist bank, the cold frame.
The cold frame. Heated with, traditionally things like horse manure.
Right. Quite the image, but different from today's electric heaters.
Just a bit. And Kessler's point about Holland often being used for the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's technically not right, but everyone does it. It's a historical habit.
And it kind of hints at that Dutch resourcefulness, doesn't it? Making the most of limited land.
Absolutely. That historical need to innovate in the Netherlands, squeezing productivity out of small spaces. You can see how that connects to developing intensive growing methods.
Definitely. Necessity really does drive invention.
So, okay, that sets the scene. Let's zoom out. Where did this whole idea even start? It's older than you might think.
Much older. There's evidence of, similar structures going way back to ancient Egypt.
Wow, Egypt. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And the exhibition they saw had that example from 1674.
Yep, 1674. But even before that, there's a great little story from Padova, Italy, back in 1545.
Ooh, tell me more.
Well, this gardener, he had these little orange trees, and Padova gets colder winters than, say, Sicily, where oranges thrive, right?
Makes sense.
So he built a special heated structure, basically an early orangery, just to keep his precious trees alive through the winter.
So driven by the desire to grow something out of its natural zone. That feels like the core idea.
Exactly that. Protecting plants, extending their range or season. It starts simple and gets more complex over time.
Which brings us back to all those names. It's kind of amazing how many ways people have referred to this.
It really is. Let's try and list some we've touched on. There's the cold frame, the mist bank.
Right, heated by manure or compost. Then the orangery, starting with citrus but becoming more recreational.
Yeah, evolving into almost a garden room sometimes. Then you had drevgrave, growing frames.
Melon clocker, melon bells. I love that. Like little individual cloches for melons.
Precisely. And simple niches built into walls. The general vexthus or growing house.
Solfangerhus sun collector houses. That sounds quite modern, actually.
It does, yeah. And we can imagine those elaborate Victorian greenhouses, too, all iron and glass.
Alongside the modern terms Skeen was searching, like Kivalites drivehus and polytunnel.
And each name tells you something, doesn't it? About the main purpose or the materials or just the time period it was common.
Melon bell is just so specific. Orangery, too. You know exactly what they started out for.
It's a map of function and fashion, in a way.
Okay, so understanding this European backdrop is pretty key when we think about settlers moving to the New World.
Absolutely. Kesser brought this up, people migrating from Europe before industrialization, often because land and resources were scarce where they were.
And the crucial point for listeners is that these people didn't just bring luggage, they brought knowledge. Centuries of farming know-how.
Exactly. They weren't starting from zero when they landed in America. They knew about soil, seasons, crops, how to actually do agriculture.
Now, the sources don't really paint a picture of them immediately building, like, huge Victorian-style greenhouses over there.
No, probably not. But that expertise they carried. It would have included all sorts of ways to manage growing conditions, to extend seasons, even if it was using simpler methods initially.
Like cold frames, maybe? Or just choosing sheltered spots, using the knowledge they had from dealing with varied European climates.
Precisely. They knew how to adapt. That accumulated wisdom about coaxing plants to grow, dealing with frost, making the most of the sun, that was invaluable.
It's their whole agricultural toolkit, honed over generations.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump back to the exhibition Kesser and Steen visited. They talked to someone there.
Yeah. The man in the green shirt. He threw in some interesting details.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, design stuff, like Sprosser, the little bars inside the glass panes.
Oh, like glazing bar?
And infattening the main frames. Also practical things like heat loss through the glass flaters of Armatab. Still a huge deal today.
Oh, absolutely. Insulation and heat retention are critical. What else?
Well, the obvious importance of getting fertilizer. Can't grow much without feeding the plants.
True enough. Anything. Unusual.
Actually, yeah. Apparently a meteorite hit a greenhouse back in 1988.
Get out! A meteorite!
Yeah. How random is that? Just minding its own business, growing tomatoes or whatever, and bam! Space rock.
That's definitely not in the standard greenhouse maintenance manual.
I would guess not. He also mentioned the Dutch tulip mania, as an example of just how crazy people can get about plants.
Tulip mania. A classic bubble. Shows the passion, though.
And how English landscape gardening ideas influenced even small home gardens. That desire to have a little piece of controlled, idealized nature.
It all weaves together, doesn't it? Practical needs, aesthetic desires, weird accidents, the human relationship with cultivating plants.
Totally. And one last thing they discussed was a novel, Anders Bottelson's Dreyfuset from 1965.
Okay, The Greenhouse. Was it important?
Yeah, apparently quite significant for his career. It's a coming-of-age story, told through memories of playing near a greenhouse in the suburbs as a kid.
Interesting setting. What did Kesser and Steen make of it?
Well, Steen's take was pretty literal. Kids hiding in a glass house.
Simple enough.
But Kesser saw maybe more layers, like the greenhouse symbolizing changes in suburban life back then, families getting a bit more affluent maybe.
So the greenhouse as a marker of social change, more resources, maybe more leisure time reflected in having one?
Kind of, yeah. A sort of reflection on Danish society at the time. But they never got to ask the guy in the green shirt about the specific greenhouse in the book, historically speaking.
A loose end. Still, it shows how even a fictional greenhouse can carry symbolic weight.
Definitely. Literature does that, right? Uses everyday things to say something bigger.
For sure. Okay, so if we pull all these threads together.
What we've got is this idea of protecting plants, extending seasons. That's ancient. Seriously old.
Right, and it started from necessity, needing to grow food, but then it branched out into, well, status, leisure, aesthetics.
And picked up all these different names along the way. Cold frame, orangery, polytunnel. Each telling a bit of the story.
It just highlights that constant human drive, that ingenuity to work with nature, but also kind of push its boundaries a bit, to grow things where or when they wouldn't normally grow.
From ancient Egypt to that poor greenhouse that got hit by a meteorite.
Yeah, and it continues today with all the high-tech vertical farms and controlled environment agriculture.
Which leads us nicely to a final thought for you listening today. We've seen centuries of ingenuity here, from manure eating a cold frame to, well, whatever the cutting edge is now.
So looking ahead, what's next? What other innovations are coming down the line for how we grow plants, how we interact with that whole process?
Yeah, and maybe think about the balance between all the technology and perhaps a more natural or mindful connection to growth. Something to chew on.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.